is presented by Hornitos Tequila. Please drink responsibly.
Audits, over 81 missed calls, landing space disputes like manifest destiny. So of course Green pokes hard in the eye and there's no call. The universe has a sense of humor. How the Rockets' hindsight, current sight might not be 2020, but why they're still in this series. Paul, what are you doing, man? Let's go.
They got the call.
Ready. The what-ifs in this series and in this rivalry. What if Chris Paul doesn't get hurt last year? What if James Harden got those calls in Game 1? What if James Harden could see the basketball last night? It's all inverted the Rockets, maybe this series. And even with that inversion, the margin in Game 1 was 4 points. In Game 2 was 6 points. So maybe a headline here is Golden State hasn't been able to run away. Frank, how did you see the Harden injury? And answer this, is Golden State really that much better, or are the Rockets just cosmically unlucky right now?
Yeah, I think they're unlucky the minute Kevin Durant signed to go to the Golden State Warriors, because that's the biggest problem they have in the series. And instead of talking about referees, now we're talking about team doctors, because remember, Steph Curry also dislocated his finger. But in terms of Harden, he was out for about 11 minutes and 30 seconds of actual game time, but the Rockets held themselves pretty well. They were in that game when he returned, 36-31. The biggest thing for Harden, why he's lucky, is that he gets a bunch of days off before they have to play again on Saturday, because the biggest game of their season will be Saturday night, and they need to play a lot better, especially on the offensive end.
Do they, though? Do they really? Let me ask it this way, Frank. Why aren't the Warriors winning these games by 15 or 20 points?
I just think it's the way that the Rockets play. They're a three-point shooting team. They can get back into the game. They have a lot of talented players. And last night, give Austin Rivers a lot of credit. Did not play in Game 1. He kept them in that game in the first half by making shots.
Glenn Yates, I turn to you. Are the Rockets unlucky right now?
I think it's a big level of both. I mean, look, what are you guys supposed to do about the best player on your team all of a sudden looking bloodshot eyes like he belongs in some ridiculous horror movie? But you know that weird term where they say that the series doesn't start until the team loses at home? Well, that's not really happening, but it kind of is happening because it feels like there's an excuse for both the first game and the second game, and it's very awkward. However, the Warriors' defensive matchups last night were just incredible. The pre-switches had the Rockets all messed up on defense. You saw that with the turnovers in the first quarter. I think that both have happened. The Warriors have stepped up their game, and the Rockets have been unlucky.
Warriors have stepped up their game. Incredible switches on defense. Kevin Durant is Kevin Durant. James Harden missed 10 minutes of time and had bloodshot eyes like he was in a horror movie. Those are the things I've heard from our panel, and this was a 6-point game, Jay. What's up?
Well, it does speak to the effectiveness of the Rockets and the depth of the Rockets and some of the moves that they've made. But the reason why they've come up short is it speaks to the flaw in the strategy of the Rockets. And that if you're depending on three-point shooting, that can vary greatly, as we saw in Game 7 last year. And also, if you're dependent on calls from the officials, if you're dependent on getting to the free throw line to win, that's not always going to go your way, especially when you have data that indicates the officials don't always get it right. So placing that much trust and faith and strategy in getting foul calls and getting to the line is going to come up and catch you. And I actually think this 3 days off might help the Warriors as much as it helps Harden in his eyes, because remember, the Warriors, due to their struggles in the first round, have been playing every other day for the past week now. So now they get a chance to catch their breath a little bit.
And Tim Kalishaw.
I think the 6-point deficit that the host of this show keeps harping on is really the key.
I'm definitely harping.
All of this. I mean, think of all the stuff that went wrong for the Rockets. They were deep into the first quarter before they had more field goal attempts than turnovers. And at halftime, points off turnovers was 20-0 in favor of Golden State. With all that, the Harden injury, all the rest, they lose by 6. And the key for that for me is you can do a lot of things wrong if you're a relentless three-point shooting team that is capable of getting a little bit hot in the fourth quarter. That's what they did. Now they go to Houston. Harden's going to get more of those calls. He'll get to the line more when he drives, and I think those games are very winnable.
So there's at least one panelist who's saying it's just not the Warriors dominating this series. There's been a lot of unluckiness for the Rockets. Go back to you, Clint Yates. You want to get back in on Kalishaw, please?
Yeah, the 6-point deficit is one thing, but the Warriors led this game wire to wire. So that's another element here in terms of what actually happened, and we're never down.
Adonde?
Kevin Durant's been the best player on the court. The best player on the court usually wins the series.
And Frank Isola.
And remember, the Clippers did win 2 road games here in Oakland, and they blew a 31-point lead. So, Tony, you're making it seem like a 6-point lead. They had a 31-point lead, and they lost the game.
Okay, all right. None of that isn't true. It's just also, Jay Adonde, what you just said here was the best player on the floor where the team usually wins. Well, should I hold that accountable for you guys as well? Tim Cowlish's got the most career wins. I guess we shouldn't even play this game today. Yeah. Tim Cowlish is going to be
Who am I going to play today?
We'll move on. 28-2. 28-2. That's not a run. That's the Dothraki ablaze running into extinction. That's what that is. Bucks 123, Celtics 102. No adjustments, Budenholzer promised. So, since there were no adjustments, what was the big reason why there was a different result, Jay?
Well, simple numbers. I mean, the Bucks shot 13 for 39 from 3 in Game 1, 20 for 47 in Game 2. So there's, voila, 21 points right there that helped their cause. You also had Eric Bledsoe, much more effective, I think, taking advantage of the attention that the Celtics were paying to Giannis Antetokounmpo and sort of sneaking behind their defense, being aggressive and getting to their basket. So 2 big differences right there. And, of course, Kyrie Irving couldn't make a shot, something that I don't anticipate reoccurring throughout the rest of the season.
Yates, what was the big change in Game 2?
Chris Middleton, All-Star, showed up and actually played like Chris Middleton, All-Star. He had 28 points in this game, went nuts from outside. That's what the Bucks have to do. As much as their top side of talent is very good, they need everybody to contribute. If you have a guy who wasn't doing it, like Chris Middleton was in Game 1, you can't.
I had Israel on the show yesterday, Clinton, and I busted him for saying the Celtics were never going to get it right in the postseason. Celtics finally lose a game, yet he said the Bucks can't be right because Chris Middleton isn't that good. Right. So then he gets burned that way. Oh, poor Israel. Frank Isola, what changed in Game 2 for Milwaukee and for Boston?
You know, it's funny. Last year, Boston did not have Kyrie Irving or Gordon Hayward in the playoffs. Yeah. Last night, they didn't have either of them. Kyrie Irving, 9 points. Gordon Hayward was a minus 30 in 31 minutes. But the big difference for me was they put Mirotic in the starting lineup, Sterling Brown out. That gives them more shooting. And Eric Bledsoe, who struggled so much last year against Boston, had 21 points. To me, it's Middleton and Bledsoe. That took a lot of pressure off of Giannis. He played much better in the second half than he did in that first quarter.
Yeah, I think the whole no changes was a bit of a smokescreen. They changed their defense. They either double-teamed Kyrie Irving or at least ran a second defender at him a lot. They didn't want him dominating the game. And Giannis reminded us why he's the real MVP. He gets more steps on his drives to the basket than Harden does. That is a true MVP.
Adonde, I'm floored that you didn't give us the argument that the Bucks should win this series because they have the best player on the floor. I'm stunned you didn't give it to us there. That's interesting. We'll move on.
Could be Kyrie.
Headline 3, and speaking of the best player on the ice, Sergei Bobrovsky. He's been a walrus in the net, like a real live walrus with no room to shoot. His superhuman postseason continues. 2-1 last night, Columbus wins. To go up 2-1, here's a quote, all right, from a Boston Bruin. Quote, he's going to crack at some point. Who said it from the Bruins? Defenseman Brandon Carlo said that. I don't know if you want a defenseman talking about how Goey's going to crack. Tim, this is about whether Columbus is better or it's about Bobrovsky just being better. But the question is Boston betting on him to crack at some point a good thing or a bad thing?
It's a terrible thing. I mean, that's the worst way to play a hockey series. Yeah, this goalie's not going to be good for that long. Sometimes they're good for about 16 wins, and they carry their teams to the Stanley Cup. In this case, yeah, it'd be a bigger deal if Krejci or Bergeron or somebody, a first-line forward, was saying he was going to crack instead of a defenseman. But this is a 2-time Vezina Trophy-winning goaltender. This is a guy who's a free agent this summer. I mean, he is, while he's doing unprecedented things for the Blue Jackets, he might be making unprecedented money for himself.
Yeah, the one-year deal is pretty good.
To crack anytime soon.
The one-year deal is pretty good, although you talked about his resume. Yes. Historically in the postseason, that hasn't been his resume, and now it is this postseason series. Adonde, is this about who's in the net for Columbus, or should Boston be betting on the idea that he'll cool off at some point?
No, it's about who's in the net. And just like the NBA truism is that the best player in the series wins this series,
all right,
in the NHL playoffs, the hot goaltender wins, right? This is a basic. Tim can back me up on that, I'm sure. So what's to say that he can't stay hot? We see it every spring in the Stanley Cup playoff. The hot goaltender wins. And yes, he had some help from his friends, the post, and even the crossbar last night. But if he's playing this well, if he's seeing the puck well, if his teammates are gaining confidence because they feel like they've got a hot goaltender behind them, there's no reason to think it
Clinton
can't.
Yates, would you make a bet a goalie would crack at some point?
I don't think it's going to be the goal that's going to crack. It's going to be the Columbus blue line. I mean, the chances the Bees had last night were not great. I understand that they're doing great in the net, the Blue Jackets are, but if they can't get any sort of quality looks or any quality shots at the net, that skate last night was relatively even except for a couple bounces here and there. As much as I want to give Columbus credit, their blue line, again, their defensemen have done incredibly well keeping the Bruins out of quality.
Nice.
I mean, if you think he's going to crack, keep that in the locker room. He is a guy who was 5-14 in the playoffs before this season. He is 6-1, so he does have a history of cracking. But think about it. Columbus has won 13 of the last 15 games. It's different now. And I know they've never played a game in May in franchise history, but things have have a tendency to snowball here. And my guy, John Tortorella, who's like an older-looking guy who looks just like me, he's doing a great job of coaching the team right now. They're the hot team. Much older.
Better looking.
Torch looks 10 times
Columbus 6-1 this postseason. The one loss was an overtime game, right? And Tim Kalisha, now your chance to get some points. Columbus, the team you picked to go to the Stanley Cup Finals.
Whoa.
Yes, I picked
2 years ago. Hold on a second. 2 years ago.
But I was ahead of my time.
Ahead of the
That's
time.
okay.
Here's what you get with the mute. All right, Brad Marchand. Let's talk about this real quick. Rabbit punching Scott Harrington while Harrington was on his knees. NHL says no suspension is coming here. To that, you say what, Frank Isola, John Tortorella-looking man?
The Blue Jackets should do an audit of that game. How is that not? How do you not get suspended for something like that? He's on the ice on his knees, and it's to the back of the head? I mean, come on, that stuff, you have to cut
Clint,
that
is that how you
out.
see it?
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is that Marchand had a terrible game as well. So, I mean, they probably would have done better with him getting out of the game. He had an awful skate last night. Probably could use it.
But did the punch have the power behind it that would suggest it needs to be a suspension? Adonde?
Yes.
He has the history behind him, though. He's a guy who's been suspended 6 times previously. He's got that reputation. You shouldn't be flirting with the rules like that in the playoffs.
His reputation's bad, but that's not even close to being a suspendable hit in hockey. That stuff happens all the time. It looks bad
Back of his head.
and turned
That's
and ran.
the problem, Tim.
Such great guys.
That is the issue.
I said okay.
Kalisha is the Brad Marchand.
You in the back of the
Kalisha is
head.
the Brad
We'll see if you think it's
Marchand
okay.
of reporters on this panel. Frank Isola is the Andrew Marchand of reporters on this panel.
That's right.
Taking a break right here, buy or sell on the other side. Kalisha, the man who saw the Stanley Cup Finals 2 years early, but he saw it.
Way ahead of my time.
Colorado, Columbus.
Back after this.
Around the Horn is presented by Hornitos Tequila.
Bryce Harper, booed at home in Philadelphia. Quote, I do the same. I was over 4 with 2 punchies. End quotes. This is not the first time we've done this story this year, Bryce booed in Philadelphia. And I want you to address that. Maybe too much is made of it by fans or by you people in the media, rabbit ears on Harper and Philly. But start with Harper's response here, Tim. I would have done the same. Buy or sell?
I'm going to question his use of the word punchies, but I'm going to buy him owning
like it.
However, what I'm mostly concerned about is the volume of booing and how quick it is. Usually you boo a hometown athlete, it takes a second. Are we going to boo this guy? He's one of our own. And there's a little bit of a groundswell. This was ball hits mitt and we are booing.
Donde, buy or sell?
I'll buy it. I think it's fair for them to expect more from Bryce Harper early, particularly because he has a history of starting pretty well. The past 3 seasons, he's batted over 300 in April. In 2015, his MVP year, he was hitting 280 in April. He wasn't as
Hold on a second. You think Phillies fans are looking at his split stats? Well, how was he in April? Should we boo him? Or they're not looking at the 13 years and nearly $500 million they're paying him. Clinton Yates, how about you?
Tim, did you forget where he signed? It's Philly. The exit velo on booze there is quicker than any place in the league. No questions asked. This is the life he chose. But for me, the reason why I think he can admit it is because this is a lot more than just what's happening at the plate. Let's not forget when he bursted out of the dugout and got tossed out of a game. He's been having issues in the early part of the season altogether, although I think he will get it together.
Frank Isola.
This is the life he's chosen. By the way, it's 13 years, so you better get used to it. Also, for players like Bryce Harper, he's never going to say the booing bothers me because then it comes across as a sign of weakness. Go ask David Price, Alex Rodriguez. They always used to say the same thing. Nah, it doesn't bother me. How can it not bother
Clinton,
me?
let me ask
Especially
you this.
early in the
You know
season.
him better than anybody on this panel, having covered him in Washington for all those years. Is he the type of player, personality-wise, that can handle this, or could it break him?
I think so. I think he's the type of player that wants to handle this personality-wise, but he's also the type of player that tends to have this happen, which is why one team in this town didn't want to give him all that money to begin with.
He's also the type of player. I mean, this is a little bit of hyperbole, isn't it? A little bit of an exaggeration. Are we going to do a story every time a player gets booed? No. We're going to do it every time Bryce Harper gets booed? Right, Frank? I mean, you're familiar with this.
Well, hang on a second. If he goes 0 for 4, 2 strikeouts, and drops a fly ball, it's going to become a big story. And also, yes, the years and the money factor into it. Once again, look at guys going back to, I don't know, Bobby Bonilla in New York, Alex Rodriguez, David Price up in Boston. This is what you have to expect, especially when you're viewed as a mercenary.
Buy or sell to Tim Anderson, Sports Illustrated. He said going to play the game his way. Anderson coming off his suspension, coming off the bat spikes this week. Floral told Stephanie Epstein that he wants to break MLB's have fun barrier. Quote, I kind of feel like today's Jackie Robinson. That's huge to say, but it's cool, man, because he changed the game, and I feel like I'm getting to a point where I need to change the game, end quote. Also in the piece, Anderson unapologetic about his use of the N-word after getting thrown at, questions MLB's diversity high up in league offices, and wants the league to embrace individualism. Jay, I want to ask you how you consider all that, but also how Anderson's last part there, and whether that jives with him not appealing his suspension.
Well, why appeal to the same people that handed out the suspension in the first place? Really, there's no place to go. I have no problem with him saying he should be like a Jackie Robinson. We should all be like a Jackie Robinson and try to incorporate what made him so great into our own lives. I also don't think that Major League Baseball should be leading this discussion about who should and shouldn't use the N-word. They're not capable of it. It'd be like this all-male panel that's talking about whether or not women should use the B-word, right?
Okay, understandably. The point about appealing the suspension, I just want to stretch out here a little bit, Jay, is would that not get that conversation that you're just talking about now started and more
This
vocalized?
is not the time or place. Major League Baseball is not equipped to have this conversation or to lead this discussion, no.
Clinton Yates?
Yeah, I'm actually buying this more now than I was when it initially happened, simply because of how he addressed it. He said very plainly, this is my word, this is our word, we'll use it as we choose. However, he was incorrect about what was going on in terms of the decision that was made around the suspension. MLB didn't just have Joe Torre sitting down and doling out a suspension. They put together a group of guys, and they had a diverse and robust group that made this decision. I do know this, and even though that I might disagree with what they came to, they gave it the best shot that they had, and that's all you can really ask for in this situation.
Frank Isola?
To invoke the name Jackie Robinson there, I think you diminish the legacy of the great Brooklyn Dodger. You're going to be the Jackie Robinson of backflips and having fun? I mean, come on. In terms of using that word, it wasn't in the locker room singing a song, saying something to a teammate. It was in a threatening manner when both dugouts had cleared onto the field. I think that has a lot to do with the suspension.
Policing of it should be different based on that. I want to get everybody's reaction on that, but Kalisha, first to you.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still struggling with the Jackie Robinson aspect of it, too. We honor him. Nobody wears 42 for a very specific reason and what he went through in 1947. Tim Anderson's aware that what he's dealing with is nothing at all like that, and he probably, if he thought about it again, he'd probably state that in a different way.
Adonde back in.
How can we have a discussion about something as nuanced as the use of the N-word and as volatile when they can't even understand how to come to an agreement on bat flips, right? They can't understand that cultural expression. How are you supposed to have cultural discussions about much more?
But to Clinton's point before, that doesn't mean you don't try. You don't be transparent in how you try. Clinton, the last word here after the horn.
Give it a shot, but policing that word is a tough thing. You talked about Jackie Robinson. Guess what word he heard a lot? Taking ownership of that is something that many black Americans feel very strongly about. MLB doesn't need to do it. It is simply an unforced error.
Thanks for your thoughts on this. Tim Kalisha, Jay Adonde, they're going to take a front row seat to watch Clinton Yates, Frank Isola in Showdown. 2 enter. Only one will leave.
Around the Horn, brought to you by Chase. Coming to you from the Seaport, presented by Hornitos Tequila. A shot worth taking. Part of happy hour.
Blazers Nuggets game 2. Here's a shot worth taking. Our chalk talk from the coach on how to corral Jokic. Roll tape.
The way you play him, I don't want to give you Blazers something, is that you play him straight up. Because once you leave the player you're guarding, he's going to get the passes.
Clinton, is Woody on to something here? Is that Portland's path to victory tonight?
He's on to something.
Yeah, that was straight up illuminating. Wait, not really at all. I mean, look, the problem with the Blazers is that if Enes Kanter's going to get you 26 and Lillard's going to get you 39 and you still can't find a way to win a game, you straight up have no chance.
Straight up, he's being guarded by Enes Kanter, who's got one arm and isn't a great defender to begin with. They want him to win the game. They need to get more from C.J. McCollum. Jokic is unstoppable. C.J. McCollum.
All right, so Woody's not on to something. He's just on something. We'll give the point to Isola.
He's in Denver.
We'll move on. Showdown 2. Watch yourself, Frank. Here's a lesson of don't try to stretch triples into inside the Parkers, son. Dad Stokes got that late speed, and this will end with maybe the kid not exactly thrilled, but this is how lessons are learned, maybe. Maybe you don't have to put it on the internet afterwards. Frank, who you got, the dad or the kid?
Brings back a lot of memories. My son did that to me after the third time around. I finally threw the ball, and my father tagged him out. That was our great Santini moment, and that was exactly his reaction.
This kid is everything baseball wants. First of all, look at his swing. It is tremendous. Second of all, look how he gets around the bags, picking up the sign from the third base coach, gets the effort slide, and then slams the hat and goes off respectfully. Everybody loves this.
Frank, we have a very important question here that's going to decide the game. How did it turn out with your son in the long run?
Well, he went to a nice school that Jay works at. He works hard, so, I guess it worked out. Hopefully, I think.
Frank Gaitola. I think this is number 100 for you. Take it, Ike. Congratulations.
Speaking of big numbers, congratulations, CeCe Sabathia, 3,000 strikeouts for you. Meanwhile, number 7 will be worn by Dwayne Haskins. It used to be worn by Joe Theismann. Nobody's worn it since 1985. Theismann gave permission. He said, yes, you can wear it. That's a nice story. I'll never forget, a year ago, Laurie Markkinen told us that he called Brian Scalabrine and said, can I wear your number 24? And Scalabrine said, sure. That's respect.
The White
Shout out to the White Mamba.
Win number 100 for Isola, the 17th fastest
Congrats
in
on
show
100,
history.
Frank.
Big number.
23.5 hour break. We'll see you tomorrow.